What's going on, folks? It's your friendly neighborhood Professor Cag, swinging through the hallways, highways, and byways of a local Zoom room near you. I'm a couple minutes early, so I want to actually make sure that I give folks some time to join us for the day. Those of you who are watching this, excuse me, those of you who are watching this on just from a link, not live, but who are joining us, the recast of this. What's going on? Thank you all so much for your messages, for your well wishes, for your patience too, as well. As I mentioned in my messages, or in my message to you all, just recently had a death in the family. My father-in-law just actually passed away, and it's been a little bit trying. Certainly trying, not even a little bit. I can't even lie to y'all. It's definitely been trying for the family, but it is something that we are going to work our way through. So, man, I really want to thank you all because there was just such an amazing outpouring of love and just the support. The messages that y'all actually sent out, it certainly touched me. It certainly touched me. It touched my family's heart. So I just want to thank you all for if you sent a message, if you sent some wishes, if you sent a text, if you sent an email, if you sent an inbox message on Canvas, man, thank y'all so much. I really, really, really appreciated that, and didn't really realize how much I actually needed that upliftment, that upliftment. Goodness gracious, I'm getting tongue tied. Thank you all so much. Still got a couple more minutes. If you are indeed here joining us live, live and in person from the chat, thank you so much. I appreciate you. Psychedelia, that's such a hard screen name. That's dope. If you have a creative screen name, uh, but you prefer for me to call you by another name, please put the other name in the chat because otherwise we have to go on the screen name. Thank you so much, Psychedelia M. I really appreciate that. Again, the outpouring of love from my students is completely unexpected and just a breath of fresh air that I didn't know that I needed. um, so thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Definitely. Thank you, Moon 1728. I appreciate it. We're getting there. We're getting there. We're getting there. Healing is not a 1 day trip. It's Luna. Okay, got you. There we go. I see you, Luna. Healing is not just a 1 day trip. It's certainly the journey of a lifetime. So we're getting there. One step at a time. One step at a time, for sure. For sure. Yeah. All right, folks. I'm going to make a reference that's certainly going to make me sound old. And I'm going to preface it by saying I know that I sound old. Um, in my mind, I don't think that it's that old, but I know that outside of my own personal sphere of understanding, this sounds old. Hope you're ready. All right, here we go. Back in my day when I was a kid, we used to actually, there was a show that used to come on Fridays, ABC Channel 7. It was ABC, depending upon whether or not y'all were actually in Los Angeles or not. And it was TGIF. It was way back in my day. And at the right time, the show would actually start off a whole series of primetime television on a Friday with this phrase: "The time is right," and no, excuse me, the time is right and the mood is right. Gonna have some fun, show you how it's done. TGIF. All right, for all of my fellow, I don't know what we call ourselves. I'm not old, but I mean the reference is old. So anybody who knows that, how about that? Everybody knows the reference. Okay, all right. Sandra, thank you so much, man. I appreciate you. Love to you. Love to you. Thank you so much. Let's go ahead on. We're going to get started. So this here is the combination of both the English C1000 and also to the English C1001 class. As I mentioned in around week 1, week 2 or so of our videos, at some point in time, I'm going to have to actually kind of split the YouTube lives, okay? Because the trajectory of our curriculum is going to take us all in different branches, right? So that's what I'm starting. I'm initiating that this week in week 4. Because we're 1 week after our the submission of our first writing assignments, critical memoirs, which the majority of you should all be receiving back. A little bit of a hiccup. I should have them all back to you all by Wednesday of next week. So some of you have already received and seen some of my comments. And let me just actually kind of give you all a brief update on that, because usually there's some changes and transformations that are occurring. They're constant, right? I mean, it's part of the learning environment in the online space, right? There are always different shifts and updates that occur. So, um, Canvas ended up experiencing or having an update over the winter break, so sometime back in December. And whatever the nature of that update was, I personally don't like it. There's a strong dislike that I have for the update, because as a result of that update, and I'm not saying that it's Canvas's fault. I don't know exactly whose fault it is. People who are way above my pay grade can answer these questions. I certainly cannot. But Turnitin.com, the plugin that they used to have for Canvas to connect, the plugin is just another word for a bridge to connect Canvas with Turnitin.com, got destroyed. And so there's only a rope that now stands to connect the dots between Turnitin and Canvas, which only allows for the plagiarism checker. Okay. I'm sorely disappointed in that update. So all of the materials, all of the even the first week messages and the syllabus and things like that, if it says, that we'll be using Turnitin.com, that was premised upon the old update or the old version of Canvas prior to this update. It allowed for us to actually create a bridge to connect to Turnitin.com, which is no longer present, no longer the situation. So now you all just quite simply have to go through and update upload your writing assignments, including the dialectical journals when they're due, the way that you did for writing assignment number 1. Okay, which is just a direct upload to Canvas. As a result, and some of you are able to see this more than others, because some of you received your feedback already, but I now have to actually hand write my inline comments on your paper itself. I am trying my absolute best. I can write great in cursive, okay? Again, with these old school references, I don't know why I continuously make these. But please, if you can bear with me, thank you. I can write well in cursive, okay? Print is more legible for other people, for a public beyond myself. Print. Luna's cracking up at me. Right? Print or writing in general on a digital medium is a crapshoot at best for me. So if there are any comments that y'all come across that are in line that are like in the margin, when I say in line, I mean like kind of in the margins, like in that kind of blank space, in between the edge of the paper and where your writing starts is like a little slim little column right on both sides of the paper. That's where you'll see my inline comments. If you cannot read them, schedule an office hours appointment with me. Yes, I am. That is my shameless plug, my shameless way of trying to get to meet with y'all virtually. But it's also to my genuine and honest way of trying to clarify some of my feedback to you. That's the best place for you and I to actually sit down to clarify and answer just like any kind of questions, any kind of things that might be unclear in terms of the feedback that I'm providing for you all. Because lest we not forget, and this is according to our syllabus, so I do want to just kind of repose it. You can revise your papers as many times as you want for a chance at a higher grade, provided that you write a better paper, right? So my feedback is geared towards the expectation that you all will be rewriting or revising your papers, okay? Um, and you don't have to. That's not mandatory. But it is an opportunity that I do like to afford to all of my students, because it's certainly it can come in handy. It can certainly come in handy. Okay. Hey, Professor, I had a question about the dialectical journal. Email said assignments to March 8th. Canvas is due March 1st. Oh, Taco Monster 4842. How you doing? What class and section number are you from? Email me that. Or excuse me, sorry, not email, but just drop it in the chat. So that way I can kind of better pinpoint that. If there's, let me see, it should be, let me see something right quick. Okay. Yeah, please let me know what class and section number are you from? English C1001. Okay. 4, 2. 1 second here. I'm just checking in on Canvas right now. Taco Monster 4842. Um, I'm so sorry. So I'm not trying to be funny. I just legitimately don't know exactly what your name is. Um, so if you can if you don't mind me calling you by your screen name, then I'll certainly continue. If you have a name that you prefer for me to refer to you as, just please drop it in the chat, and I will certainly comply. Let me see. Okay, dialectical journal number 2. Okay, I see exactly what you're saying. Taco Monster 4842. I certainly feel like the Transformer when I say that. Um, are you username? Are you username ladies man 28417? uh, it looks like okay. So it's I have it here. Why? Discussion. Oh, you know what? Okay. I know why I have it due. Oh, yeah, why I pushed that due date up. Okay, I'm so sorry. So there is a mistake in the course schedule. The dialectical journal. Angel, how you doing, Angel? Thank you so much. Appreciate you. Appreciate you, Angel. Hey, Tamika, how you doing? I see you. So for those of y'all who are in my English C1001 class, not the C1000 class, okay, so this only applies to the folks who are in my C1001 class. I see the discrepancy here. There's a mistake in the on the course schedule for the dialectical journal. So as I was updating things last week, I recognized that the the dialectical journal is actually due. It should be due March 1st because you all will be finished with Issa Rae's The Misadventures of an Awkward Black Girl March 1st. Okay, this Sunday, right? We're this week we should be reading from pages 141 all the way through the end, which is about it's not that long. It's about maybe 20, 30 pages or so. So we should be completing that book at the end of this week here. That's when your dialectical journals should definitely be due. Um, I Thank you so much, Tamika. I really appreciate you. Yeah, this is certainly a season of transition. Um, Certainly a season of transition right now, man. God's blessings to you and your family as well. I hope that this definitely helps to bring you all together in ways that you all have never been brought together before in new ways. Um, there was a mistake in the course schedule. I should have actually made the dialectical journal due by March 1st. So it's certainly due March 1st. I'll accept it all the way up until next week, okay? But I do want to keep the assignments in alignment with the readings that we have or that are unfolding throughout this semester, okay? So Angel, that's why you see the discrepancy. It's due March 1st. I'll accept it. You guys won't be. I won't take off any points or anything like that if you turn it in March 8th or if you need some extra time, just because you'll have that weeks long window right there from March 1st through the 8th. Hopefully that provides some clarification. Thanks so much. Okay, cool, good. I'm just seeing your comment right now. Um, and if you guys have any other questions about that, feel free to email me or just shoot me a text on Slack or something like that. But just for clarity's sake, it is and should have been due March 1st in alignment and in accordance to when you all would be finishing the book itself. Okay. Um, it's important for us to kind of keep that due date. If you do turn it in March 8th, what that's going to do is it'll put you back um some because you'll have to complete the discussion board number 5, and the discussion board number 5, it'll be published this weekend. The discussion board number 5, ironically enough, is going to require y'all to, there we go. The discussion board number 5 it'll be focused on a completely different kind of topic, right? As is the learning module for week number 5 or course module number 5. It's kind of it kind of has more to do with the larger genre in which you will be writing your new essay. Okay, that's what the discussion board number 5 is going to focus on. It's going to work in accordance with and in alignment with the course learning module from course module 5, right? That's also the reason why the original due date for the dialectical journal should have been March 1st, because it comes at the tail end of us completing that book and us starting to shift our focus and our attention towards rhetorical analysis. Okay. Writing assignment number 2 is going to be focused on composing a rhetorical analysis. So I do want for y'all to make sure that I just want to try to kind of keep the lessons as clean as possible and the assignments in alignment with the lessons. That's really what that's about, right? So that's my long-winded way of just kind of providing some explanation and some context there. Okay. All right. Any other quick questions just before we actually get started? This here is I'm kind of I'm polishing and refining my my YouTube content creation skills. I don't even know if that's a real thing for a professor. It's definitely like our regular everyday lives. But I watch a lot of YouTubers, so I think secretly I might have aspirations for becoming a YouTube content creator solely with my class. So I'm trying to work on providing segments like a YouTuber does. If anybody out there has any good YouTube recommendations, any people who they actually follow or channels who they subscribe to just because they like the kind of format and how they present information, definitely let me know. I'm in the market for good recommendations. I need some ideas for how to actually present content on in the YouTubes. Okay, so just in terms of just some quick announcements here. Okay, so let me actually start off with English C1000. And in fact, what I'll do is just to try to make the lines a little bit more clear, and so that way they're not super duper blurred. Again, like I said, there's this we've reached the point in our semester where we're going to actually diverge the YouTube live presentations. Um, for this first hour here, I'm going to actually talk mostly in almost solely to my English C1000 crowd. Okay. So if you're in academic reading and writing, right, English C1000, the first hour, so until about 3 o'clock, I'm going to actually be talking to you all. For the second hour, I'm going to dive a little bit more deeply and address strictly and solely my English C1001 crowd. Okay. So if you're in English C1001 and you want to go out, kind of grab you a burger or something like that, grab you, something to eat, go do like a little quick 30-minute run or some stretching or something like that. Now's the time at 3 o'clock. I'll switch. I'll make the transition in focus to C1000. But until 3, I'm going to focus in on English C1000. Okay. So C1001, be back at 3. Excellent. Got you, Luna. Okay, for sure. All right. So announcements for English C1000. Couple of things. So one, you have your dialectical journals that are indeed due. Oops, let me actually reload this here. Okay. English C1000, folks, you all have your dialectical journals, which will be due March 8th, alongside of discussion board number 5. Your dialectical journals will actually be focused in um, on Barbara Ehrenreich's Nickel and Dined. Okay, as we are moving through week 4, we are in the week where we are first starting off with Barbara Ehrenreich's Nickel and Dime, which is part of the reason why I wanted to actually set up this YouTube live, so that way I can give you an introduction into Barbara Ehrenreich's text. Okay, this here is perhaps maybe one of the most important texts that we could be reading right now, especially given the level of economic uncertainty that a lot of us are experiencing, witnessing witnessing firsthand, feeling firsthand too, as well. By the way, if anybody in here has recently purchased gas this week, I certainly did. You are feeling the effects of the economic upheaval and shifts, not solely according to the stock market, but almost exclusively as a result of the redistribution of wealth from the middle to the already ultra wealthy. Barbara Ehrenreich's Nickel and Dimes will certainly provide us with a brief but thorough and powerful introduction into that discourse, into that conversation. Okay, so your dialectical journals in English C1000 are due March 8th. Next, the second announcement, just in terms of our assignments and mission reminders. You all, we're gonna have so your friendly neighborhood Professor Cag is slightly different. I try to actually make myself different in these very conscious and organic ways. I don't like tests. I was a notoriously horrible test taker back in my day. Still probably maybe somewhat to this day. I'm not quite sure. I haven't taken very many standardized tests recently. But back in my day, I was a horrible test taker. Oh shoot, heck, can y'all hear me? Test 1 2, test 1 2. Can y'all hear me okay out there in the YouTubes? I see I just got a message, or there was a message in the chat. Okay. All right. Thank you, Val26R. Appreciate you. Okay, yeah. If y'all have trouble hearing me, or if this is better, if it's better for me to hold the microphone like just like directly to my face as opposed to like right here, let me know. Let me know if you actually hear a difference. Okay, drop a message in the chat. All right. um, so I don't like tests. I hate exams. Okay, it's not only me. Okay, okay, all right, yeah. Um, can y'all hear me? Hopefully, y'all can hear me. Let me know what you're hearing out there in the YouTubes, because I don't know. Okay, all right, cool, thank you. Yeah, yeah, yeah. If y'all are having trouble hearing me, like, let me know like what it sounds like on y'all's end, because I legitimately have no clue. I'm flying blind up here in the YouTube space. So let me know. Just drop a message in the chat and let me know. Um, but for now, I'm going to continue on and just kind of monitor the chat. Okay. Um, oops. So I hate tests. I don't like tests. I don't like exams. And I just see on here I gotta actually kind of update some language. I like having information celebrations. Okay. And what I mean by that is for your midterms and also your finals, um, I gotta flip the script on it. I flip the approach. It's open book, open notes. I don't like got you tests. I'm not trying to trick y'all. Um, and I don't think that it actually does y'all any good if you have to just quite simply, I don't know what it is that I'm supposed to be testing. If you're only completing an exam from the information that you can memorize, right? Today, back in my day, they had a very limited way of assessing individuals' knowledge. They would just quite simply use as a poor substitute for uh, whether or not an individual actually made knew something, right? They would use memory assessment as a way to examine how well you've learned something, right? So and recall, recall, and regurgitation were stand-ins for learning. I don't agree with that particular approach, and it's not that it's subjective. All right, I don't want to. I'm not actually advocating. I'm not even making that argument. I really don't even want to contribute to the thought pool on the conversation that I've been hearing in public discourse in regards to education, grading, and assessment that leans toward the side that suggests somehow grading is arbitrary or subjective. Um, it can be if that is indeed the approach that you as an instructor take to evaluation. That's not the approach that I take. Um, I'm grading specifically, and I want you all to be very clear about this, which is why I kind of flipped the script on the whole exam and test, even the language of it. I clearly didn't do it in y'all's update. I mean, in y'all's announcement. So my bad. I got to go back and update that. Okay, my thought. I'm not perfect, but um, I got to flip the script on it because I'm not assessing your memory. Y'all are in an online class. I'm a pragmatist at heart, philosophically, practically, praxisly, right? I'm a pragmatist at heart. So I know that if I were in y'all shoes and my professor, I was in an online class, I'm taking the test myself, open book and open notes. Maybe for fun, I might actually try to like answer some stuff off the top of my head, but my notes, where's my book? I'm taking notes. I know for a fact when they actually used to give us open book and open note tests that I took better notes. See where I'm going with this? I'm testing, right? So now the question actually is, right? Okay, well, Professor Cag, if you don't actually test in order to see how much they actually remember, this ain't nobody's voice. I'm just a voice I've made up in my head. This is what it sounds like, right? The folks who are engaging in the debate about grading and assessment being subjective, right? Well, Professor Cag, if you're not actually assessing the memory of your students, if you're not taking an old school approach to testing, and then what are you grading, right? Well, I'm assessing your ability to take notes and how well you organize it. Okay, that's what I'm assessing. I'm assessing your ability to take notes, to distill information in a way that pulls out key information and details, and I'm testing the degree to which you can restate them in a condensed way in your notes. And I am also testing to see whether or not y'all read. The only way that you're going to actually pass my exams, right, which aren't even exams like that, right, is like what I like to call, right, the only way that you could actually successfully participate in the information celebration is if you've actually read. You have to have read. You have to have actually gone through the PowerPoints. You had to have gone through and at least paid attention. That is precisely what I am assessing. Okay. So y'all have we're gonna have us an information block party, y'all. We're gonna have us a party online, right? We're gonna have us a midterm information celebration on March 22nd. And it will be online. It will be assessing. It says on here, oh my goodness, heck yeah. Okay, so I need to actually make some updates. I will be assessing your the degree to which y'all have actually taken notes well on the PowerPoints readings and also to the modules from weeks. It says weeks 1 through 7. And I will be assessing you all through on weeks 1 through 7. However, I will. There we go. That's right. That's what I'm. Yeah. Yes. Information party time. Okay. I want y'all to show off how much you know. Okay. I want y'all to show off how much you know, how much y'all have been reading, how much y'all have been taking notes. Okay. I'm not interested in testing y'all's memory and things like that. If I wanted to test y'all's memory, I'll see how many phone numbers you remember. I'm sorry, that's only funny. That's only funny if you're a back in my day kind of person, if you were born in the 1900s. I'm so sorry. That's my own personal my version of for me, right? It's my own personal old person's joke. Oh boy. Okay. So also too so yes, information celebration. I will be assessing you all on modules weeks 1 through 7. There's an assignment that I'm going to have y'all participate in next week under course module week 5, right? From the English C1000 folks, right? Yeah, right. Yeah. Human phone books, right? It used to be all up top. It used to be all up top, right? That's if I want to test y'all information, I'm going to see, can you remember your mama and daddy's phone number? What they cell phone number? Don't give it to, do not. That's a joke. Do not put nobody's number in here. Do not put nobody's number in this chat right quick. Okay, folks. But if I wanted to assess y'all's memory, that's exactly what I would do. So we're going to have, I will be testing you all, or rather the range of questions are going to come from weeks 1 through 7, but there's an assignment in course module 5.0 where you all, this is part of the other component, the reason why I got to flip the script on this exam stuff, because I hate that. I don't like the language. I don't like the, I don't like nothing about it, man. I'm like DMX. I hate the way exams walk, the way that they talk. I hate the way exams dressed up. I don't like nothing about no exam. I like nothing about no test. I want you all, right? There's an assignment where I'm going to have you all look at your notes, and I want you to write a set of 10 questions and answers based on the readings, the PowerPoints, the video clips, so on and so forth, that come from weeks 1 through 5. Okay. Right. So I'm going to take those questions. I'm going to take, if you write a really good question and answer, right? Okay. I'm going to take that question, right? And I'm going to take and put it in the midterm information celebration. Okay, so you may actually see your question pop up in that midterm information celebration. That's how I flip the script on the exams and the testing and things like that, right? This is it's the information block party. What you do at a block party, everybody come through to the block and they actually bring a dish or they bring something to contribute to the party. Guess what you're gonna bring? Questions, answers based on the readings, not based on chat gpt. Don't do that. Not based on your best not knowledge. Nope, I don't want that. No, give it to me. If you can't quote it chapter, book, and verse in the readings, the PowerPoint lectures, the modules, right? Bring your, there we go. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, right. BYOQA. That's what it is. BYOQA. You hear me? Like, bring your own questions and answers, folks. I knew exactly what that meant. Great job. That's what I'm talking about. That's right. Yeah, bring your own questions and answers. That's the kind of information block party that we're gonna actually participate in and that we're gonna construct, right? So just be on the lookout for that. When you see it due, it's a real thing. I think you'll have until March 8th to actually submit those questions and answers. And these should be questions and answers that come directly from the readings, that are based on your notes, right? That come from the modules, that come from the readings, that come from the video clips. Okay. Um, I need to see, and what I'm assessing, just to reiterate here, right, is how well it is, one, whether or not that you all have read, right, the PowerPoints, the lectures, watched the video clips, read the articles and the essays. And I'm also assessing the degree to which you've taken notes on those items that you've read, right? So that's the thing that I'm assessing. That's what I want to see. One of the best ways for me to actually measure that is to see what kind of questions and answers y'all done came up with, right? It's a lot more difficult to say that you weren't ready for a test, and not that I'm trying to create the test from this space, but it's a lot more difficult to say that you weren't ready for a test or for a midterm assessment if you're participating in the construction of that midterm, right? So that's really what my goal here is. Or rather, that's a major part of my goal here, is to create a space, create an opportunity and window for y'all to actually compose and construct your own, for y'all to participate in the construction of your own midterm information celebration, right? That's part of the reason why we call it a block party, y'all. All right. Everybody who's on here, I'm going to actually have an assessment at the end of today's YouTube PowerPoint presentation, where I'll have y'all complete a survey. All right. At the end, you all will have to complete this survey so that way you can receive your extra credit. All right. When you're able to receive, excuse me, when you complete the survey, and it's only for the folks who show up. Okay. It's only for the people who show up. If when you complete the survey, then you will receive your extra credit. Okay. That is precisely what we will do, and how I will make sure to see who has who's participated in the YouTube live sessions. Okay. All right, so looks like that's about it. Oh, also too, office hours this week, next week, every single week that comes right after, will always be available to y'all using the appointment link. You can always find the appointment link in the announcement that I posted, and then you can also find the appointment link. Let me see if this will actually work for y'all. Oh, heck, you know what? No, it's not going to work. Let me see. Let me leave the student view. Okay, let me go here to the simple syllabus. If y'all go to the simple syllabus with me right quick, if y'all are right here, if you're near a computer, if you're at your job listening to me, hey man, hey, I love y'all. And if y'all are out there, shout out to the people who are at their job trying to get their learning in right now, listening to their professor on the YouTube. Okay, shout out to the folks who living life a little bit dangerously. They got their earbuds in their ear and they listening to their professor talk about having a midterm information celebration, block parties, and all that stuff. Man, shout out to y'all, man. I love y'all right quick, man. That's commitment and dedication. I appreciate you. There we go. Right? Yeah. Miss Romero, I see you. Right? I see you. Yeah, no, for sure. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. No earbuds either. We're loud. We're on the speaker. We're on the speakerphone. What's going on, work? Chat, what's happening? Friendly neighborhood Professor Cag. If y'all are interested, all the people who are in the background, right quick, y'all are interested in improving and enhancing your life. Come on back to community college. Come start over. Come tap in with Professor Cag, your friendly neighborhood professor. I'm swinging through the hallways, highways, and byways. Tap in with me. There we go. Okay, cool. Thank you, Vanessa. Thank you. Okay, I got you. Thank you, and thank you so much for your message too as well. What's going on, coworker? How you feeling? Thank you so much for your message, Vanessa. I did receive it on Slack. Thank you. I was very heartfelt and I really really appreciated it. Again, at the beginning of this chat, I said I didn't really realize how much of my students' messages, I didn't realize how much y'all's messages would actually uplift me. And yours was certainly one of them. It was definitely one of the ones that I actually received that I didn't realize that for. So thank you so much. I appreciate you. Um, so the other way to actually find the appointment link, right? So if you go here, I have to go through my professor view or like the just my own the teacher or instructor's view. Um, this should be how your syllabus pops up when you click simple syllabus. All my folks who are here in English C1000, and when you click simple syllabus, your syllabus should pop up like this. Right here, underneath the additional, under instructor contact information, where it says additional information, set an office hours appointment with me. This link should take you directly to the my calendar page, and there you'll be able to actually see. I'm gonna. Oh shoot! Dang it! That sucks. Okay, sorry. Let me go right back. Let me go right back. Let me go right back. Okay, so this should be the page that y'all see when you click here. Let me see what's today. All right, so today's the 27th. Next week looks like I only have enough times for Tuesday. So this is what's going to pop up. You're going to click a time, click a date that corresponds with your availability, right? All of these times here are good. These are designated times that I have set aside, so I am always perfectly fine to meet during these times here. If you don't see a time on here that works or corresponds with your availability, send me an email. Ask me, hey, Professor Cag, work, family care responsibilities, whatever it is. None of those times there actually work for me. Whatever the reason might actually be, none of those times work for me, Professor Cag. I was wondering if I might be able to, schedule an office hours appointment that floats outside of those times that you have listed. Send me a message. I can certainly make myself available outside of these times too, as well, if you yourself are not available. Okay. But you're going to click on the date that corresponds with your availability and also to a time. You're going to click the time. You'll click next. You'll enter in your name and also to your email address. If you want to give me a heads up on what specifically you want to meet about, drop it right here in the notes section because that'll help me to prepare. Once you complete it, click schedule event. It'll send you a reminder a day before we have our office hours meeting scheduled, and it'll also send you the Zoom link. So that way, all you have to do is just click the link, boom, at the time that we have, and we are good to go. Okay. All right. All right. Um, let's see here. Okay, so that's the simple syllabus nod. So that's all for the important announcements that we have coming up. Just in terms of upcoming deadlines and events, Dialectical Journal number 4 is due this Sunday, March 1st. Okay. So those of you who did see the announcement for week 4, you should see under the upcoming deadlines and events the link to, but it won't, you can't access it just yet, but you'll see a brief introduction, like a kind of setup for the submission form, midterm exam questions and answers, which is due March 8th. There's a little blurb right there where I'm just kind of explaining what I already explained, excuse me, to you all in regards to what that's about. That's your way of taking shape of being able to shape and taking part in the construction of your midterm exam. Also, too, what's due that same day or by that same day is your um, rather that this here's the last day that it's actually due, right? Your dialectical journal number ones, right, which is based on the East on excuse me, sorry, not Issa Rae, but that's actually based on nickel and dime. Yep. Yes. Yeah. 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 So that's actually that correlates with what's in the course schedule. Dialectical journal number ones are due March 8th. You there. I need to actually give you all. This is part of what I'm going to actually discuss in just a second, which is part of my introduction to Barbara Ehrenreich's Nickel and Dime, as well as the lesson and the lecture on rhetoric. You all need to study and memorize, okay, right? Even though the midterm exam is not assessing your memory, right, you still need to memorize, okay. It is vitally important. Memory is such an important foundational fundamental skill in the everyday um, practice of academia, right? In the everyday practice of schooling, memory is such an important fundamental skill, right? That you want to make sure that you can keep your tool, right? Your mind, your memory sharp. So I need you to study the Aristotelian appeals chart. That's what's underneath the important deadlines and events, post number 3, dialectical journal. Study the Aristotelian appeals chart, which is also underneath module week 5. But if you click on the link that I provided for y'all, you should be able to access the chart maybe a little early, right? But you're going to also too, you have to actually keep up with the reading in nickel and dimed here. Okay, that's kind of the main focus of this entire week's readings for week for week 4. It's the introduction to nickel and dime. So without further ado, let's get started. um, I do want to introduce. Okay. Link doesn't open. Okay, well then don't worry about it. It'll be open this weekend. Today's Friday. At the latest by tomorrow, I'm gonna publish the course module 5 by tomorrow, so that way you guys can have a little bit of a heads up or a little bit of a head start on it. So you guys will know what's coming up in week 5. The reason why I don't like to publish it like kind of early is because I don't want to confuse you all. You all have something that you need to do for this week. I want you all to get through that for this week. If I start publishing like all the modules and things like that, it can get a little bit confusing about what to do when and things like that, right? And then people start to access things out of order. And the way that my modules are constructed, they're meant to be engaged with in a consecutive order. Okay, so complete what it is that you all have to do this week, and then the following week will be available. Yeah. So let's actually, without further ado, let's go ahead on and take a look here at this Barbara Ehrenreich PowerPoint presentation. So I'm accessing the nickel and dime PowerPoint presentation from week 4 modules. So you should see underneath the section entitled Investigating Social Difference. Okay. This week, you all were starting off the week with a reading from Alan Johnson. It's actually a book entitled, do I even have that book? It's a sociology book. I thought I had it with me. Heck, maybe it's at school, but in any event, it's a sociology book where where Alan Johnson, who's one of the contributing editors, breaks down the idea of social difference, right? Okay, so the idea here is, now that you all have at least one essay under your belt, okay, you all have one essay at least under your belt, and that's allowed for you to do. It's allowed for you as a scholar, as a thinker, as a student, it's allowed for you to reflect critically on your own upbringing. It's allowed for you to reflect critically on your own background, your family history, your family's educational history. And it also is allowed for you to actually think about, what's a significant moment in my life in which I've had to overcome an obstacle, right? It kind of goes without saying that it kind of also forces us to think about, okay, well, wait a minute. Obstacles have I gone through in my life? What obstacles have I gone through? What obstacles have I experienced where it's almost kind of threatened my ability to develop a growth mindset, right? Going back to Howard Gardner, um, and his talk that he did on Beyond Wit and Grit, right? The idea of the growth mindset means or specifically refers to our ability to see our skills, ourselves, our identity, and our abilities in response to challenges, right? That is to say that when one is confronted with a challenge and one experiences maybe perhaps right a loss or some defeat, right? One looks at themselves as a result of that defeat and they say one of two things. If they experience that defeat, oh heck, shoot, dang, heck, see, man, I knew I wasn't going to actually do that well. So I'm just not that good at taking tests, right? I'll never be good at taking tests, right? I knew I was going to get a bad score. That's why I didn't even want to, right? That's what researcher Carol Dweck, who's a psychologist, um, actually a psychology researcher specifically, in her book entitled Mindset, which you all can certainly Google. I'm telling you these things so that you guys can actually go back and Google and kind of fact check and just kind of do your own exploration, right? This is how she defines the fixed mindset, right? Um, Versus, right? So the other response that one could actually have or experience when they get confronted with challenges or even kind of experience some form of defeat, right? The other response that they could have is, oh, dang, man, shoot, hey, I messed that up, man. You know what? Okay, I gotta get back on. I gotta, man, shoot, let me see how I can, what I do wrong. Let me see how can I actually how can I do this differently, right? So one actually engages in challenge as though it's an opportunity for one to improve, for one to engage in the act of self-improvement, right? That's the growth mindset that's characterized, according to Carol Dweck, as a growth mindset response, right? And so part of what I wanted to kind of highlight for you all, right, just in terms of that response, is that now that we've had the opportunity and the time to reflect critically and in deep ways on those moments in our lives where we've gotten confronted with the challenge, where we've either responded, in a fixed mindset or a growth mindset to, right, now that we have that under our belts, right, now we know, now we're in tune with our growth mindset, right? Now we're in tune with the ways in which we actually perceive our own skills and abilities, okay? Right? Now we're in tune to a certain degree with even what it is that we hold most dear, right? And where I'm getting that from is because, right, part of the point of the critical memoir is indeed what's communicated in your title. One of the main central core tropes of a critical memoir, right, is indeed the theme, which reveals the hidden, oftentimes universal message or point, the moral, right? What used to be called right back in, jeez Louise, I'm so sorry. Y'all are gonna have to bear with me. I'm gonna say back in the day a lot, okay? Y'all gotta understand this is not meant to actually like venerate, the things that used to be that are no longer no more. But this is just quite simply to provide reference, okay? Like back in the day, what they used to have on cartoons, right? Part of at least from a policy standpoint, um, it was actually I do believe that part of the FCC back in the day used to actually mandate that cartoons and children's programming actually be and actually have a kind of educational purpose to them, right? So that purpose, right, that learning purpose, that educational purpose is what we call the theme, right, in critical memoirs, right? It's the message that you discovered that you learned during that time, okay? So now that we've had the chance to kind of unpack that for us, what we really want to do now is we want to actually initiate a shift. Okay. Right. Now that we've gone from reflecting critically on our own selves, our lives, right, our personal experiences, our backgrounds, who we are, and how things got to be this way for us. Now we need to actually shift our perspective, not leave it behind, but simply turn our gaze towards the world, towards people on a wide scale social level, right? So, at the very least, that forces us to actually recognize one, first and foremost, that we are not the only ones who've gone through that kind of exercise, right? Or that is to say, we're not the only ones who have morals, right? Or kind of values that matter to us. Eh, To this degree, right? When we begin to look at people on a wide scale social level, right? One of the ways in which one of the first things that we are kind of confronted with is this notion, this concept of identity, right? Which is specifically one of the key ways in which identity is actually determined is based on how other people see you, right? Based on how others see you. Kate Luttrell in her book entitled Remix um, defines identity, and she's actually this is more of a secondary definition, right? But Kate Luttrell actually defines that identity, or explains that identity is a matter of three things, right? Identity is determined based on, right? It's triangulated according to three things, right? One, the genetic material that we're born with, right? That is to say, based on our family's history. That's the first determinant of identity, right? Or one component, rather. The second ingredient, right, in this dish that we call identity is social perspective, right? Or rather, determined based on how it is that society views individuals, right? That's the realm in which we are shifting towards, right? We're moving into as we move out of week 3 and into week 4, out of the realm of the personal and the individual and into the realm of society, right? As well as social issues, which is precisely what nickel and dime actually presents us with, right? It gives us the context, right? It creates a bridge to help us to make that transition in terms of that shift in our perspective, right? And then identity is also too, right? A matter. The third thing, right? The third way in which identity is actually determined is based on individual choice and agency, right? So, take for example, um, when we begin to read Alan Johnson's The Social Construction of Difference, what Alan Johnson highlights for us is basically the three fundamental assumptions of identity, right? And he highlights for us, especially he examines rather for us, especially from the perspective of from the social perspective, right? How identity is determined based on how society sees an individual, right? And for Alan Johnson, it's vitally important that his readers, right? Part of the reason why we need to actually read this text in very deep kinds of ways is because, identity, while there's nothing more frustrating than looking at yourself through the lens and the eyes of how others see you without having the presence of your own individual agency, right? There's nothing more frustrating than that. In fact, there's nothing more um, generative to developing and sustaining a fixed mindset than looking at yourself through the lens and the eyes of how other people see you, right? If that is the sole way that an individual's identity is determined, well, then the wisdom and insight from Audre Lorde actually remains most prescient, right? Audre Lorde, feminist theorist and scholar, who says more or less, right? This here is from her autobiography, again, critical memoir, right? Entitled Zammy, A New Spelling of My Name, right? She, this is not a direct quote from her, right? But more of a paraphrase from her, right? Which, in which the quote could be found in that particular book. Uh, we'll be stuck living a lie. We'll be stuck living a lie because we're looking at ourselves through the lens of someone else's gaze. We'll never know who it is that we are and how we define ourselves, right? Well, see, this here is important. It's vital. This is one of the first firmament of understanding as we dive into the book entitled Nickel and Dime. Why? Because part of what this book, Nickel and Dime, written by Barbara Ehrenreich in 2000, right? It was published in 2000. She had begun writing it, I believe, in 1998. One of the reasons why she even initiated this project in the first place was really at the behest and through the prompting of her editor, Lewis Lapham, right? Who wants her to engage in the kind of old school hard-hitting investigative journalism, right, of the John Tish school, right? Those are my folks who recall, again, back in the day, right? John Tish is an old school journalist, right? Trying to see what life is like as a result, right, for people who were most affected by the passage of a particular strand of legislation, which is largely successful because there was a social, what passes for then at the time, right? Social media, which is largely through public media, right? Outlets, news media outlets, also too, right? On Jerry Springer, Jenny Jones, right? So on and so forth, right? Just in the popular discourse, right? There was a perspective that was championed in that discourse of the time, which portrayed and also to perceive, right, which looked at and talked about people who were poor, who were living below the poverty line, folks who were on welfare, folks who were not rich, not wealthy, oftentimes people of color, especially Black folks, especially even more in particular, right, Black women who were characterized as being leeches on society. Yeah, I gotta tell you, I remember I grew up during these times. It was a weird kind of time. However, only among and within certain circles would you actually find some resistance to that characterization. And here, let me just be very frank and clear, right? When I say that at this time, I don't mean that it started in 96. I don't mean that it started even in 98. I mean, it actually reached a head. It had already been in existence. It had reached a fever pitch by 96, 98. And that was the language and the framework, the ways that we used to actually talk about poor people, especially Black folks, Black women, as welfare queens, as not only welfare queens, but also too, right, as super predators, right? You see, part of the language that was a part of the dominant, or rather the popular cultural lexicon at that time, right? Part of the way that we used to talk about people who were poor had nothing to do with who and how it is that they saw themselves. It had everything to do with talking about them from the lens and the perspective of how society, right, or the dominant culture perceive him. You see, and because, right, what was popular at that time, right, the way in which dominant culture, right, on a wide scale social level, right, the mainstream flow of society saw or perceived and thus talked about, and as a result, right, what most people actually heard about poor people, right, folks who were on welfare, folks who were struggling to make ends meet for whatever the reason might have actually been, right? What began to be recirculated was this perception and even the language of poor people as being leeches on society, right? So, as a result of that perception gaining dominance and popularity, what we begin to actually see is political will and animus for the passage of a particular strand of policy. We saw a string of policy, everything from the Omnibus Crime Bill of 1993 to the passage of minimum sentencing laws, right? Especially at the state level, right? What we begin to actually see were the first firmaments of what would later on become, right, the policy that's responsible for cutting off a large swath of Americans who certainly needed it away from receiving financial assistance, aid that was based on need, right, from the federal government, right, which is precisely what welfare, food stamps, right, and general relief specifically are, right. Uh, as a result of the passage of the 1996 Welfare, in short, right, what was called the Welfare Reform Act of 1996, um, we actually have the it was technically called the Personal Responsibility and Work Relief, Workforce Relief Assistance Program, I believe. We're going to actually kind of touch on that in just a second. Um, of 1996, right, which is passed underneath the President Bill Clinton, right, 1996. However, even though the legislation passed under Bill Clinton, okay, um, for those of you who might either remember that or who might actually kind of fancy yourself being into politics, especially the current iteration of politics, as disdainful as they may be currently, um, at that time, the political divides were not as pronounced as they were. They certainly, political cooperation was way more in season and way more present than what it is now, right? So even though Bill Clinton actually passed the Welfare Reform Act, what is popularly known as the Welfare Reform Act of 1996, at that time, the animus for even the construction of that legislation was done under way before Bill Clinton got in office. Started under Ronald Reagan in 1980 in the 1980s, particularly. It was as a result of his one of the early speeches in Ronald Reagan's, I think, second term, where he introduced this concept of the welfare queen, right? Him and also too his wife Nancy Reagan championed this manufactured illusion, right, of a welfare queen, which, for all intents and purposes, was a stereotype that was based on black women being leeches on through welfare, right, on the American people, right, on everyday hardworking Americans, right. My point here is that it was essentially a bipartisan effort that was meant and made to create and thus successfully pass the Welfare Reform Act of 1996, which um, uh, damaged and hurt many Americans across the board, right? And so it's out of this kind of historical context that Barbara Ehrenreich is writing this book, right? Um, uh, Nickel and Dimed, right? And so here, right, she offers a kind of firsthand account of what life is like. Part of what she's interested in exploring, right, is, what is life like? Can low wage workers survive on minimum wage salaries, right? As a result of the passage of the 1996 Welfare Reform Act, people were meant, excuse me, a time limit was introduced into how long Americans, or recipients rather, not even just Americans, right? But how long recipients could actually receive um, uh, um, uh, welfare, right? And the interesting thing about that is, as a result of the 1996 Welfare Reform Act, it limited the amount of time to previously under AFDC, which was introduced in 1940s under FDR, 1945, if I'm not mistaken, 1945, 1948. It was actually assistance for families with dependent children, right? And the number one recipients of, and this is from the time of the 1940s all the way through the 1980s, all the way up until 1996. In fact, the number one recipients of welfare at that particular time, right, were unwed white women, particularly throughout the Mid-Atlantic, Midwest, and even to some degree, right, along the coastal cities, and especially throughout the South, right. Although, right, so a question some of y'all have to be asking now is, okay, well then where they get the welfare queens from? Great question. The number one recipients, according to the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, over a 40-year span, right, from 1945, right, to 1980s, really over a 55-year span, right, all the way up through 1996, right. If the number one welfare recipients of were single unwed white women, where did they get the stereotype of the welfare queen from? That's part of my point in terms of introducing it, and also too part of my point with this week's lesson. This is perhaps the most important lesson that I will actually give in this class to you all, which is the lesson on rhetorical analysis, right? Um, where did they get it from? In short, let me answer the question. They created it out of nowhere. Excuse me, sorry, not even out of nowhere, but they created it on the backs of and on the heels of the unfavorable perception that existed at this time as a result of the passage of the civil rights legislation of the 1960s, 64, 65, 68. There was a generally unfavorable impression of white perceptions, right? On Black folks and the perceived benefits that they received since the civil rights legislation. There was a generally kind of unfavorable attitude that posters actually kind of charted um, during the 19 or as early as the 1980s, really as early as the late 1960s, early 1970s, that persisted all the way, even until this day, all the way through the Tea Party. But that characterized the civil rights, the passage of the civil rights legislation, right, as a somehow kind of special handout, right, or extra privilege, right, that Black folks actually received, that was unwarranted, right. And so, what Ronald Reagan and his speech crafters and speech writers actually pivoted off of when they were constructing this ethos and this image of this notion of the welfare queen. And they did a lot of work to actually try to substantiate this, right, through specific candid and personal examples of Black women in Chicago, a Black woman in particular, right, who was living in Chicago, who had kind of fit the bill in the profile, right. Now, that's not to say that Black women weren't, that there weren't single mothers who were Black women who had multiple children who were on welfare. However, right, if you only got that impression from the speeches of Ronald and Nancy Reagan, right, or if you only looked at popular culture and weren't looking at the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, right, the facts and the data that actually helps to illustrate this point, well, then you were simply left up to what it is that you heard, right? So you were left up to whatever the impressions that were left as a result or within, right, the scope of the dominant perception, right? Whatever was popular. And so you left those moments having learned that, at least according to Ronald Reagan, right, Nancy Reagan, right, the images that we saw in popular culture and television and film, television, music, movies, so on and so forth, right, that Black women were the number one recipients of welfare in this country and in this nation, right? The reality was a lot more further from the truth there. However, it was across the back of the racial animus that at the then time, right, the then polls were revealing, right, to the American public, right. It was off the back of the racial animus that white perception had of the gains of the civil rights legislation, that the white perception was characterized about Black folks and about Black people, right? They leveraged that ill will and that ill perception, right? That ill-informed perception to craft a new kind of illusion, right? A new kind of stereotype in the form of the welfare queen, which was therefore a trope that was used in popular culture and repeated, rinsed, recycled, and repeated, not even rinsed, but just quite simply recycled and repeated in all manner and forms of popular cultural media, right? That actually helped to reinforce the perception that, well, Black people are leeching off of the hard work, the hard earned dollars of your average American worker, right? Which created a general animus to revise and reform the laws that were then on the books in the form of AFDC, Assistance for Families with Dependent Children, aka welfare, right? To create new policies that change the rules on welfare, right? In ways that would kind of, to some degree or another, minimally impact the Black community. And I say minimally impact the Black community, right, relative to their white counterparts, right? The reason why I say that, right, is because if we're looking at the stats, right, the number one recipients of welfare at that time were single white women. So it did more harm, right? There were, i.e., right, there were more people who were single white women who were impacted by the shift of the change, the addition of the time limit to welfare reform than any other group in these United States, right? Give me one second, folks. I'm going to have to actually pause my screen. Hold on one quick second. I'm so sorry, folks. There is nothing that I would actually do to interrupt our chat, to interrupt our live time, except for something like super duper important. That was a super duper important call. My wife's car is in the shop right now, and they just called me back with a price tag and the issue. Not my favorite call, but it's one that I had to take nonetheless. So my apologies here. Just to kind of go back to our share. Okay. So, right. So we have, and so we're gonna also to kind of explore some of these speeches too as well. We have to explore these speeches because part of what I'm trying to tell you all here is, and part of the reason why I want us to actually focus on and develop the skills of understanding rhetorical analysis here is, see, one, I'm not crazy, and I don't think that y'all think that I am, right? But just in terms of if I'm being fully conscious of recognizing where we're at currently right now in terms of our capacity, our on a wide scale social level, right? Our capacity for engaging in discourse on race, racism, the history and the legacy of white supremacy, and the ways in which racial discrimination is like even comes about. Right? If I'm being conscious and recognizing our current level of literacy development, right, to have those kinds of discussions, I would rate our literacy, right, not you individually, right, but just on a wide scale social level, I would rate our capacity for having conversations about the history of race, racism, and racial discrimination and white supremacy as very low, right? And what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to provide you all with some kind of context that ties directly into the book itself, right, for Barbara Ehrenreich's Nickel and Dimed, right, and in ways that Barbara Ehrenreich doesn't even actually get into, but in ways that actually help to provide you all with a clearer picture of the environment in which Barbara Ehrenreich is actually writing in, right? You see, in this book entitled Nickel and Dime, right, which was released it was published in 2000, right? It was actually started, the project was started in 1998. You see, what Barbara Ehrenreich is doing, she's going on an investigative journey where she dives into the world and into the realm of the low wage worker. And she is trying to see, she has one fundamental question. There's one problem that comes about as a result of the passage of the 1996 Welfare Reform Act. And that's the problem that's expressed in the form of a question. Can low wage workers, many of whom are, and this is the part that I need y'all to understand, right? Man, I need y'all to understand this, right? Your professor doesn't do anything just quite simply for the sake of doing anything. There's always a reason, and there's a tie into, right, the texts that we read. Can low wage workers, the majority of whom, many of whom, are white women who are single, who are also on welfare, can low wage workers survive on minimum wage salaries? That's the question. Right? That's the question that Barbara Ehrenreich's text, that is the central problem that Barbara Ehrenreich's text seeks to develop a response to, right? And so in adopting the role, right, she sets out in her book, she provides a set of rules that govern her experiment, right? She initiates this experiment going undercover as an employee, right? And she tracks, really chronicles her story, her journey into the world of the everyday low wage worker, right? And charts not only her experiences, but even more importantly, here's the narrative component of her book. She tracks, rather, the pathetic component of her book, right? The pathos component. She tracks the experience, the words, the feelings, the heart, right? The struggles, and even the minimal, right, triumphs, though they're present in there in certain ways, of her coworkers who are lifelong, right, or who have been participating in the low wage economy for quite some time, right? She uses their experiences and their journeys in order to fill in the gaps to inform her audience, really to not just to to explore. Let's say for right now, right, to explore the answer to that question: Can low wage workers survive on minimum wage salaries? Right. In this book, we actually see two particular kind of roles for the characters that that inform this nonfiction text. Right, the role of the employees who are workers. Right, take a look here at the images. Right here, what do you see in terms of the images? Well, here, this is just an example. I love Five Guys. Five Guys has the best burger and fries. Yes, I know I'm from California, born and raised, and I like Five Guys better than In-N-Out. I'm sorry for the sacrilegious blasphemy, but it's a matter of fact. They give you two patties, and they also have bacon. In-N-Out does not. All right. So we can discuss. You can give me your emotionally justifiable outbursts in the chat for my heresy as a Californian and a Los Angeles native for that. But Five Guys, better than In-N-Out all day long. Here's the important part. Notice their uniforms, right? First of all, they're all in uniforms. There's a commonality, a uniformity about their hair, about their outfit, about the headgear, right? There's a certain uniformity that they have that is not present in management, folks, right? Notice just even in terms of, right, their outfits. Here you see more freedom, right? Relatively more, right, than the uniforms that the employees have to make. There's certain rules that employees have to abide by that management does not. Rather, that management has to actually enforce. In fact, and it's not even so much that management does not abide by them, right? They certainly do have to abide by the rules, right? But rather that management is actually in this weird predicament, right? This weird kind of position where they have to also be at once the enforcers and also too, at least in Barbara Ehrenreich's text, right? At this time, right? Management is the one that is creating the conditions in which low wage workers are forced to actually be exposed and made vulnerable to the hidden costs of poverty. In addition to management, what you have who's invisible. Oh no, you can't see me? Oh shoot. Oh shoot. I'm so sorry. In-N-Out is king. Oh shoot. Can you guys hear me? Can you see me? Can you see me now? Hopefully y'all can see me. Um, can you see me now? Whoops. Whoops. Sorry, I'm texting at the same time. Okay. Cool. Okay. All right. So I think, ooh, heck, I hope that it's not. What about now? Can y'all still see me? Or am I blinking out? Do I go blank when when I switch over? Am I blank right now, y'all? Okay, cool. Great, excellent. Okay. So right now, the folks who are not present in this text, right, the characters who are not there, and this is what I want you guys to pay very close attention to. This is why we need rhetoric, right? Specifically rhetorical analysis. This here is our secret tool, okay? This is our secret tool for understanding how stereotypes are created in the first place. You see, 3,000 years ago, Aristotle, Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, used to give lessons on how to persuade an audience, especially for leaders, leaders of what they call the polis or the city at the time. Rhetoric is derived from the ancient Greek art of persuasion, right? Rhetorical analysis refers to the application of that skill on a particular text or a speech in which an individual is using rhetoric, right? So in this case, we're going to use the skill of rhetorical analysis to unpack the text of Nickel and Dimed, right? To help us to understand what is Barbara Ehrenreich's point here, right? What is she exploring? What is she examining? And is she persuasive in terms of kicking across her message, right? In terms of communicating her message, right? So this is what I want to actually help us to understand here, right? Or rather, what I want us to learn is how to utilize this tool of rhetoric or rhetorical analysis to unpack Barbara Ehrenreich's Nickel and Dimed in order so that way we might better assess her persuasion, right? Rhetorical analysis is comprised of two components: contextual analysis, which explores and examines, right, the overall environment in which a particular text is shaped, and then textual analysis. I want to talk a little bit about the context of Barbara Ehrenreich's Nickel and Dime, and I know I'm running over time here a little bit, so just bear with me for all my C1001 folks, right? So the context of Barbara Ehrenreich's Nickel and Dimed spins off the heels of the passage of the 1996 Personal Responsibility and Work Opportunity Reconciliation Act. That is the technical name of what is shortened to be the Welfare Reform Act of 1996. Okay, this is the formal name, right? So what did it all entail? One, first and foremost, right, we can define something based on its actions, or rather, we can define things based off its actions, period. Right. So what did it do? Well, first and foremost, right, the Welfare Reform Act of 1996 limited the amount of time that recipients could receive benefits. Throughout the 1980s and the 1990s, we heard, right, again, across a variety of different forms of popular culture, messages and songs and jokes and sermons and talks, a lot of criticism, right, of the old welfare system, and really, more importantly, more specifically, not even so much criticism of the system, but rather criticism of the people who were recipients of it, and only a specific strand of people who were recipients of assistance, right, under the former system, right. The former welfare system, right, entitled AFDC, Aid to Families with Dependent Children, right, recipients were characterized as lazy losers leeching off of taxpayers' money, their hard-earned dollars. And so y'all should see, hopefully, let me see if hopefully it's working. Okay. So this here is just a little kind of short comedic or satiric animation on welfare queens. So this is what it is. If you never heard of it, this is kind of a short satire on how people used to characterize it.
We all have. A single mother living in a blighted area of your town with more mouths to feed than an Ethiopian soup kitchen, yet somehow living high on the hog. You might ask yourself, why should I care? Well, the fact of the matter is she's been working the system to support her extravagant lifestyle, which is taking money out of your pocket. This whole mess goes back to 1935. It was a common misconception at the time that charity wasn't enough to take care of the lazy and the shiftless of society. This is when Franklin D. Roosevelt instituted the Social Security Act, a.k.a. the SS Act, a.k.a. welfare. By offering a disincentive to work, welfare lures useful citizens into a life of dependency. Worst of all, it gives its recipients raises for having more children. Kids for Cash policy funds their extravagant spending, as well as creates an exponentially growing army of useless feeders as the offspring learn the defective behavior of the queen that spawned them. The bottom line is spending money on the poor doesn't work. After dumping valuable resources on them, they still end up poor. It's a waste of our tax money, and besides, if they really wanted out of poverty, they could pull themselves up by their bootstraps and get a job. In manufacturing, perhaps? What people need to realize is we can't afford to throw away precious tax money when it can be used for more important causes, like subsidizing the impoverished oil industry, or giving incentives to destitute big box retailers, or financing the beggarly corporate agriculture industry. We're building stadiums for down-and-out sports team owners. So, get mobilized and stop the plague of welfare from engulfing the world.
Okay, right. So stop sharing that. So this idea, I wanted to show that animation just because it does a good job of actually kind of capturing the attitudes and summarizing the attitudes over the years. Hopefully y'all can see me. Okay, double checking. Of summarizing over the years, right? Some of the attitudes, right, and some of the sentiments and the feelings that characterize the American attitude, right, or the dominant American perception of folks who are recipients of welfare, right, and so part of the part of the Personal Responsibility and Work Reconciliation Act of 1996, right? It took place within a social and economic, more so an economic environment, in which it was characterized as a period of great exponential economic growth, right? Literally, the people who were policymakers, legislators, more importantly, business leaders were developing a perception that the growth they were experiencing would be unending, right? But especially policymakers, right, and corporate heads adopted this view. They experienced, we as a nation experienced a period of what's known as and what's kind of remembered as great economic prosperity. Here's the problem. When I say we, I'm not talking about me. I'm not talking about you. I'm not even talking about the majority of Americans. You see, the majority of Americans did not experience a period of great economic growth, or at least not one that was sustainable. Whatever growth it is that individuals experienced, it was relatively short term, right? Because what we saw, especially through the passage of reforms like the welfare reform of 1996, excuse me, what we saw were the first firmaments and the first steps of the redistribution of wealth from the middle class to the ultra rich and ultra wealthy. You see, without a college degree throughout the 1970s, right, you had access to industrial jobs, right? You had access to work at the foundry or at a factory, and you could work there all the way up until you retired, right? And you earned a solid, substantial, livable wage, right? Enough to actually purchase a home, right? Enough to actually save up for retirement, right? Enough to actually get your kids through college, enough to take at least a 2-week vacation, right, in the summer, and then get back to work, right, throughout the rest of the year, right? That's how much people made all the way up until like the 1970s. And then around the 1970s, 1971, as early as 1971, what we begin to actually see was the spark and the start of a process where businesses and factories in industry at that time would shut down here in the States, across America's not only heartland, but also too in the major urban economic coastal regions. They saw factories and work where employees, thousands of employees, were excuse me, the factories that employed thousands of workers were shut down and then relocated overseas. All right. Thus, after the 1970s, what actually became available were service work jobs, right? Housekeepers, servers, dishwashers, waitresses, maids, so on and so forth, right? Increasingly, those jobs, which were a part of what we would refer to as the low wage work sector, right, became more increasingly available, while careers that provided a salary along with benefits, healthcare benefits, and a retirement were increasingly or decreasingly less available. At this same time, the national attitude towards low wage workers and towards the subsequent reform of aid to families with dependent children, right? The attitudes toward those folk, there was a suspension of concern for folks who were on welfare, right? A suspension of concern for folks who, for workers' rights as a result of careers becoming decreasingly unavailable, right? And low wage workers who are not salary workers, who do not have health care provided for them, who do not have a retirement provided for them on behalf of their employer, right? Who do not have access to protections and equal treatment under the law, right? There became a kind of a growing sentiment of a lack of concern and compassion for those individuals. And this here is essentially the main points that Barbara Ehrenreich wants to actually explore and unpack in her novel, in her nonfiction novel entitled Nickel and Dimed, right? There are four main key themes here that she's exploring. One, first and foremost, is the theme of wage slavery. Second is the theme of the hidden cost of poverty. Third is the theme of the dominant corporation. And the fourth is the theme of management by surveillance. Okay. Which one of these themes do you see? This is what I want for you all to actually, as you're reading Barbara Ehrenreich, I want you to pay very close attention. I want you to highlight quotes that speak to one of these themes. Okay. So as you're reading, I want you to read with curiosity at the forefront. Curious about what? Curious about what Barbara Ehrenreich is actually showing or saying to us about one of these themes here, right? Which theme do you think or do you see as being the most prominent, right? Which theme do you see as being the one that Barbara Ehrenreich makes the strongest case for, right? And then what examples from the text can you pull from the text to illustrate that point? All right. That's how I want for you all to actually read through the text entitled Nickel and Dimed by Barbara Ehrenreich. All right. Okay, folks, sorry I went over my time limit here, right? So when you say read, do you mean about the assigned readings within the module or the book we are reading for the dialectical journal? Both. Okay, Luna, I'm referring to both, right? You certainly want to look for that in both, right? You want to look for these themes across the readings that are in that are under the modules, right? So, like for example, in this week's readings, you won't see that much in this week's readings. Under this week's modules. Yep, that's exactly where I literally just pulled this from this week's modules. Okay. So you all can go back and revisit this PowerPoint presentation by reading and taking notes. You want to read everything that's in the modules, okay? So starting with investigating social difference, you want to start first and foremost by reading and taking notes on Alan Johnson's essay entitled The Social Construction of Difference. Next, you want to complete the assignment, which is due this week, this Sunday, where I'm teaching you. It's actually a cool way to write an effective summary, okay? YouTubers don't even do this, all right? Quote unquote, what passes as professional summarizers now don't even do this, right? I mean, the really good ones do. The majority of them do not. Okay. So the rhetorical précis is actually it's actually a French technique. It's called a rhetorical précis. Précis is French for summary, right? I want you all to actually write a critical summary. There's a template that's provided in that exercise on the rhetorical précis, the social construction of difference, where it'll guide you through how to write a critical summary based on the reading that you just completed. That means, here's the way to do it. You have to actually go through and take notes on what you read. How do you take notes? Well, glad you asked. Now that we're transitioning, shifting our perspective away from our own lives, right, and into the exploration and the territory of understanding how other people actually not only perceive the identities of others, right, but also towards the perspective, towards the area of unpacking and exploring the ways in which individuals develop their values, right, and how they protect those values. And now that we're shifting our gaze towards that, I need for you to be able to also to shift the way in which you all read, right? So you want to read this nonfiction text entitled Nickel and Dimed. You want to read the readings that are posted under the modules in ways that allow for you to identify key components of their message. What are those key components? Well, first and foremost, their message, right? What's their message? The overall main point that they're trying to argue for. And then also, second, I need you all to, if you do not already do this, and the majority of people don't necessarily do this, but I need for you all to become well versed and familiar. I want you all to develop a relationship with having multicolored pens and highlighters. Why? Well, because you highlight the main message of a particular text, and you can underline any quotes or examples, any kind or type of supporting details that work to support the main message, right? Or the main theme. Okay, right? There we go. You have friction multicolored pens. Friction multicolored. I don't know what that is. What is that, Vanessa? I'm not even hip to it. Send me a link. If they I use Sharpies. It's probably the old school teacher in me. But yeah, like so any kind of supporting detail, whether it be a historical fact, right? The way that I do it, and I'm going to say this in short way, right? Highlight what I read and write a summary of what I read. Kind of, right? Luna, it's more nuanced than that, right? Highlight the main message. Okay? Drop it. Underline, right? So like for example, erasable pens. Okay. Heck yeah. See, I'm not even hip to that. I'm not even hip to that. That's brand new to me. Underline in one color, one kind of supporting detail that you see the author actually developing throughout either their essay or throughout a chapter, right? So for example, I'm just going to give this as an example, not a hard and fast rule, but if you want to stick to it, it's a good strategy, okay? I'll underline historical facts and information with a red pen. I'll underline them, right? So like, for example, as I'm reading through Barbara Ehrenreich, she doesn't have this in chapter 1, but in chapter 2, which is where y'all should actually be reading for next week, right? In chapter 2 of Barbara Ehrenreich's Nickel and Dimed, she has these thing called footnotes at the bottom of chapter 2. Excuse me, sorry, no. Even in chapter one, she has these things called footnotes, which are like kind of notes that are down at the bottom. And every single one of those footnotes are they represent an important piece of factual data. Sometimes she's using information, statistics, and facts from the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, which I mentioned earlier, right? So I would underline that in red, right? Every single time Barbara Ehrenreich introduces a new coworker, right, or tells the story of a coworker or an experience of a coworker, I'm going to actually underline that in purple because that's her colleagues' experience, which carries with it a kind of emotional power to it, right? So every single time she uses the story or an experience of one of her coworkers, that's a supporting detail called an emotional appeal. I want to highlight that or underline that in purple, right? And every single time Barbara Ehrenreich uses or establishes like her own kind of credibility, like if she's um, giving you a little bit of insight or information in terms of like whatever rules she might create for herself under the experiment, or if she's telling you about her personal background and like how she arrives at this work, I'm going to highlight or underline that in black because that's an example of her building her credibility, which is a key important supporting detail of how she persuades her audience of her message, right? Those three, that's why I have three different color pins. That's what I'm going to actually use these pins here for, to underline quotes or quotes, right? That demonstrate or that fall under one of those three categories. Okay, let me check the chat. Is the book we need to read the one with the blue cover and a picture of her on a cover? It can be. I mean, there are a variety of different versions or iterations of this particular text, and the cover changes often, but long and short, Luna, go to the modules. The book is right there. It says nickel and dimed Barbara Ehrenreich PDF. You have a free PDF copy of that book right underneath week 4. It's a part of our readings for this week. The readings are always correspond with the week that we are in. Okay. Highlight the main message. Vanessa's asking, right? Highlight the main message, underline in one color, supporting detail, historical facts. Yes. Underline new experience, new coworker, supporting detail. Yes. In purple. Yes, that's correct. And then underline, um, and then underline Barbara Ehrenreich's trustworthiness or credibility, right? Her personal background or the rules that she sets, right? That's under the category of credibility, right? And trustworthiness. Underline examples of Barbara Ehrenreich's credibility in black or just another color. Okay. Right. So it's those three things, right? It's three things that you want to look for in terms of supporting details. What you've listed here, which are two, and then add on Barbara Ehrenreich's credibility and trustworthiness in another color. That's what you want to underline and highlight. Okay. And when we get ready to write the dialectical journal, yes, exactly, right. It could be in black or, if you have another color, another three colors that you want to use, like you want to use purple, turquoise, and orange, that's fine too. Just make sure that you use your own color coding system and that you stay consistent all the way throughout. Okay. Having trouble finding it, it's in, go directly to module 4. Go directly to module 4. Okay. That's the only place. Or actually, rather, that's the main place where you'll find it. It's literally on the course module 4. You got to go to modules in order to find it. Let me see here. There we go. Okay. Now let's go back. Okay. All right. So I'm just going to share my screen with y'all. Hopefully you can see it. So if you'll see English C1000, I'm here. I'm underneath modules. If I click view as a student, then it should look exactly like this. This is how it should pop up on your end, right? So here we have course module 1, course module 2, course module 3, course module 4. Under investigating social difference, it's right here. Nickel and Dime Barbara Ehrenreich PDF. Okay. You'll also find, right, this week's text, right, Writing Arguments, Chapter 5, which is going to give you all the information, all the key details on what I was just describing in terms of rhetorical analysis. This is what you want to actually read and take notes on. That's the textbook, not Barbara Ehrenreich's Nickel and Dime, another text, right? Our other course text, Writing Arguments. Anytime you see this little abbreviation right here, stands for Writing Arguments, right? You're going to find chapter 5, which gives you the entire overview and background. Read and take notes on this chapter right here to learn more about rhetorical analysis. Okay, Barbara Ehrenreich is here. Writing Arguments PDF is just below. All right. Okay, folks. So hopefully that was thorough enough as a crash course. Goodness gracious, heck, man. I am so sorry, folks. So I am going to make I ran out of time here covering English C1000. I'm going to make a video for my English C1001, folks. This is essentially the same thing that you all are actually doing, because you all are learning about rhetorical analysis in your course as well. So it's the same. Stop sharing here. Okay, right. So it's the same mechanics, same overall lesson, right? The only difference is the content itself for you all. Let me just kind of give y'all a real quick one. Critical thinking. Okay, right. So my English C1001, folks, you all are getting introduced to rhetoric in a much more thorough way because we're English C1001. That means that we're actually diving in a lot deeper into that history, into that background that I mentioned earlier about Socrates, Plato, Aristotle. I'm even exploring and unpacking another group called the Sophists, which gives you all a background on this concept of rhetoric, and in a way that allows for you to kind of tie in a critical analysis of Issa Rae's The Misadventures of an Awkward Black Girl, right? There's an assignment that you have here under discussion board number 4. Let me actually read the student view here so you can see it. And in this discussion board number 4, right? So here you'll see I'm actually tying in again. Don't just jump directly into discussion board number 4. Don't do that. Start at the top, work your way all the way through, work consecutively in order to take notes on the video clips that are presented up there and on the handouts that are embedded in the learning modules. Okay, you have to read and take notes. That goes for everybody across all my classes. That is the only way to be successful here in this class. Okay, you must read, you must take notes, you must learn. Okay, being in part of this online class, this here's you kind of have to become like your own best teacher, right? I'm more kind of here as a guide on the side. So here, right, I'm referencing some of the things that we learned in those earlier modules, right? Socrates distinguishes between what he believes is false and true arts. And then here's a little bit of a brief breakdown of how Socrates ties into Issa Rae and her approach, right, to composing her own art, right, in the form of not just her critical memoir, but also to her television series, right? For those of you who have never heard of Issa Rae, we got to get you to actually get out from underneath that rock. Issa Rae is a famous writer, producer, scholar. I would call her theorist, who a creative, right, business mogul, right, exec, so on and so forth, who is a postmodern pioneer in the tradition of expressive culture, right? American expressive culture, but especially, right, Black expressive culture, right? And there's an interview here where she's talking about her art by Rolling Stone, right? And she's talking about, the space in which she actually creates her art from. it kind of connects up with the concept of true versus false art, right? That Socrates is actually kind of getting at in some of his early works, especially in Plato's Gorgias, right? So I want you all to actually take a look at that for this discussion board number 4. Take a look at the interview. Take a look at this clip here, right? What you'll see is that the interview echoes and resonates with the video clip. And then I want you all to write a 350 to 500 word critical response in which you actually explore, right? And here, even I'll kind of refer to it, right, as a postmodern philosopher, in which we explore this question of how Issa Rae might actually use the arts to affect the larger social good, right? The idea of using art, using your creativity, using your platform to create or to shape, right, a more positive, by positive, right, what, at least on a wide scale social level, what one means, especially what Issa Rae is actually referring to, right, is to make the nation or to contribute to the energy wheel, right, of the nation to become more inclusive, to affirm those fundamental core values that lie at the heart of our democratic experiment, right? Democracy as a social ideal, right? To use your art to affirm and to reimagine, right, an America that is not less tolerant, right? And also too, in America that's not even like necessarily more tolerant, not even to advocate for an America that is tolerant at all, but rather an America that is more inclusive, an America that looks with curiosity, right, at social difference rather than judgment, right? Which is in essence, at least from an artistic standpoint, one of the criticisms that Barbara Ehrenreich has of the larger nation, but especially the policymakers who have therefore used their judgment to shape or reshape policy in ways that make us less supportive, in ways that make us less inclusive, in ways that make us more judgmental and more discriminatory as a nation through the passage of the Welfare Reform Act of 1996. Okay, right. That's just to connect the tissue to my folks in the C1000 class, right, and also to kind of help to set up and to provide you all with the trajectory of, for those of you all who are in my C1001 class, right, to provide you all with the trajectory of where you are heading towards in this assignment. And I see I already have a couple of responses. Okay. All right, folks. Well, I will make a YouTube video, especially for my English C1001 class. I'm going to have a larger lecture on rhetoric. I'm going to get super duper nerdy because like rhetoric is actually like one of my core specialties. Like I'm a super nerd about like comics, hip hop, and basketball. I'm definitely a nerd when it comes to like rhetoric too, like ancient disciplines from 3,000 years ago. So yeah, I'm going to actually create a little bit of a video for y'all to actually go and explore. And this week's lesson, you'll notice, is relatively light. It's meant to be light. It's meant to be more focused on providing you all with the background and understanding the larger cultural and historical context out of which rhetoric emerges. Okay. As I mentioned, you also have your dialectical journals. I will accept them as early as this week, right? So your dialectical journals should be focused on Issa Rae's The Misadventures of an Awkward Black Girl. And again, I want you all to apply that very same concept that I was mentioning to my English C1000 class, where as you're highlighting or reading through the text, right, you want to highlight the main moments in which you can see what Issa's message, right, the overall message of her book actually is. Side note, right, just to kind of give you all a little bit of a heads up, right, she lets you all know what her message and her purpose of the book is in her introduction. Okay, right. It's actually even on her last page of the introduction. So go back and take a look there, right? You'll see what the main message actually is. You'll see where she characterizes the purpose of this book, right? And so And even if you can't necessarily see where she's spelling it out very clearly, right, but you get the overall sense based on the experiences that she kind of characterizes here. I want you to go back. I want you to certainly highlight those moments where those experiences are most clear for you, and I want for you to again highlight those and then underline, right, the supporting details that help to support and sustain that message, right, throughout her book. Those points that you underline are going to be used as quotes that you can therefore apply in your dialectical journal assignment. Okay. All right, folks. I will indeed see you all a little bit later on. Absolutely. Y'all are certainly, excuse me, y'all are certainly welcome. Um, y'all are certainly welcome. I absolutely love and adore you all. I am going to post up this survey. Give me just a couple of minutes so that way I can note who is here and who was not. Okay. Uh, okay, folks, give me just a couple minutes here. Just kind of finalizing some details on here. Okay, all right, cool. Okay, so we are going to publish this. Anyone with a link will be able to do it. All right, and we're going to copy that link. Okay, folks, here you go. Please make sure to fill out and complete the survey. Hopefully, you should hyperlink it right down here at the bottom. Go ahead on and complete the survey. Um, so that way I can make sure to give y'all credit from my English C1000 and my English C1001 class. Okay. All right, folks. Y'all take care. Have a great day. Take care of yourselves and take care of each other. And thank you so much for taking care of me. Again, your message, your kind words, just man, a tremendous uplift, tremendous boon for me and my family during this time. I really appreciate y'all. If you have any questions, feel free to send me a text on Slack. Feel free to send me an inbox message on Canvas or send me an email. I respond to all. If it's taking me a little while to get back to you, send me a message on another platform. So like if you use Slack, send me an inbox message if it's taking me too long to get back to you. If you send me like a Canvas inbox, send me an email or a Slack message, whichever one. I'm gonna be in and out, but I'll try to actually be super attentive to the new messaging that I actually receive across each of those three platforms right there. So don't hesitate to actually message me, but just send me more messages in case I missed it. Okay, folks, take care and excuse me. Take care of yourselves and each other. I will indeed actually see y'all very soon for our next YouTube live. Peace.